We each have a Nazi in us. We need to understand the psychological roots of authoritarianism. We each have a Nazi in us. Everyone. Right? It's not about what's in here. It's about what's in here. And I believe if you reach your full potential, you can bring the Nazi in you out. All it takes is being really, really drunk and going to the off license, and the guy checks your ID and says, "Sorry, I can't sell you your bottle of El Dorado," and that Nazi, that Nazi comes right out, doesn't it? Doesn't it? You know, just when you get annoyed enough, you know, like when your base gets raided in Rust, that Nazi comes right out. There's a Nazi in all of us. I believe in you. Neuroimaging studies have showed that the amygdala, the tiny almond shaped brain structure that mediates fear, is larger in people with more right wing views. Maybe we've got a lot more to be afraid of. Hmm? We're all getting locked up left, right, and centre right now. They're emptying the prisons. They're letting, like, rapists and murderers and all kinds of people out of the jails to make room for us. I think we're justified in being a little bit fearful right now. Especially when you point out, you know, can immigrants please stop stabbing and raping our children? And we're just told, shut up, racist. I think we've earned it to be we've earned it to be a little bit of fear, you know. But anyway, any attempt to understand the attraction which fascism exercises upon great nations compels us to recognise the role of psychological factors. The German Jewish social psychologist Erich Fromm asserted in 1941. Such factors are not specifically German or, say, Italian, nor were they the manifestations of a unique historical era, now safely in the distant past. Not only can the malignant political, economic, ideological climates required for the flowering of fascism develop anywhere, so are its emotional dynamics present in the psyche of most human beings. I'll save it for the end. We each have a Nazi within, the Auschwitz survivor Edith Eger has written, pointing, in my observation, to a near universal reality. I mean, one of my writer's girlfriends, she has a Nazi in or something. That was a joke. Many of us harbour the seeds of hatred, rage, fear, narcissistic self regard, and contempt for others that, in their most venomous and extreme forms, are the dominant emotional currents whose confluence can feed the all destructive torrent we call fascism, given enough provocation or encouragement. All the more reason to understand the psychic sources of such tendencies. Nazism has psychic sources. Look at you, Hyperborea posting, whose grounds and nature can be expressed in a word: trauma. In the case of fascism, severe trauma. I'll save it for the end. I will save it for the end. Nobody is born with rabid hatred, untrammeled rage, existential fear, or cold contempt permanently embedded in their minds or hearts. These fulminant emotions, when chronic, are responses to unbearable suffering, very important part, right? Why would anyone want a godlike government? Because things got that bad. But anyway, our responses to unbearable suffering endured at a time of utmost vulnerability, helplessness, and unrelieved threat, that is, in early childhood. It's not in childhood. It's not in childhood. People take a little look at the world and go, I want to fix this. And when the government goes, well, you're not allowed to, people will go, well, it's time for a new government, a better government, a stronger government that can get things done. That is a big driver. The human infant enters the world with the implicit expectation of being safely held, seen, heard, physically protected, and emotionally nourished. Her feelings welcomed, recognised, validated, and mirrored. I do all of that with my children. I also like to pick them up and throw them across the room onto the bed. They love it. They love it. They giggle and they laugh the entire time. I like to pick them up, spin them around like a plate and everything. I frisbee them over my head and all that. I haven't dropped them yet. I'm going to knock wood on that one. Haven't dropped them yet, but they love that. You know, fight your child. Fight them. Sometimes they get a little bit uppity. Sometimes they grab your phone and they run away because they think it's funny. Well, it's not funny. So you grab them and launch them across the room onto the couch. That's what you do. By the way, see, when I say I do all that, I don't throw them across the room. I'm like 3 feet in front of the bed and I go, wee, and I'm right. I don't just shot pop my child across the room. Tempted to sometimes, that's a joke. Now's not the time to be making jokes like that. Given such an evolved nest, in the apt phrase of the psychologist Arcia Nervais, we develop and maintain a strong connection to ourselves, a deeply rooted confidence in who we are, a trust in innate goodness present in the world, and an openness to love within ourselves as without. You know, that can also be achieved with a community, a very, very close-knit community. That can be the source of your love and care and affection. And when that community gets threatened, people start to panic a little bit. People start to seek, and when the community is really, really, really threatened, people start to seek out extreme solutions to that. There's a lot of things in here that you are not considering. Trauma represents a disconnect from these healthy inclinations, in extreme cases, a defensive denial of them as being too vulnerable to bear. And that, in essence, is what fascism is on the emotional level. A desperate escape from vulnerability. As is, I would argue, okay, there's a little tiny bit of that in there, but it's mostly people have an idea of what they want the world to be like. And yes, people do want safety, people want security, people want prosperousness, people want all of that stuff. And whenever there's a government that is not... Look at Weimar. Right, Weimar Germany was a shithole. It was horrible, and it bears a striking resemblance to stuff that's going on now, right? Basically, you've heard the meme, and one day, for no reason whatsoever, Hitler was voted into power, right? You've all heard that meme, right? Now, that's the meme, but there was a lot of reasons. There was a lot of reasons. People got fucking fed up. People got fucking fed up. Everyone was like, the world around me is changing. I feel that the world changed dramatically. You know, I'm actually recording this on 9/11 of all days. The world, after the towers fell, the world changed, right? And people are having a look in the past and going, I feel that society was a lot better back then. I wish we could go back there. But the government and all the little useful stooges in the university are saying, shut your mouth, racist. Anyway, we've just doxed you. Right? Like, that's what's happening. And people are starting to get fed up of it. People have an idea of what they want the world to be like. Everybody does. Every single person does. The leftists do, I do, you do, the right does, Nazis do, libertarians do. Everybody has an interpretation of what they want the world to be like, right? You're never going to get everyone to agree. You'll get small pockets of people to agree, which is why I believe in the complete destruction of states and a formation of microstates based on ideological coalescence, but that's a discussion for another time. However, whenever people have an idea of what they want the world to be like and everyone's saying, no, you cannot have that, anyway, here's more migrants, here's more rape, right, people start to get a little bit desperate and they start to opt for the extreme solutions. That's why. What's the only thing that can get us out of this? And then certain things start to look a little bit attractive, don't they? Looking at the hideous demigod of fascism, Adolf Hitler, or at his present-day caricature, Donald Trump, shut the fuck up, you idiot, who is often compared to him by idiots like you, including some years ago by his current vice presidential running mate, J.D. Vance, we find many remarkable characteristic similarities. Relentless, self-hypnotizing mendacity, mistrust bordering on paranoia, devious opportunism, a deep streak of cruelty, limitless grandiosity, unhinged impulsivity, crushing disdain for the weak. But enough about Kamala Harris, let's hear about Donald Trump. Kamala Harris kept several black men in prison for 20-odd years on weed charges and even went into proper fight to keep them locked away in prison, and then fucking laughed about smoking weed in uni on a podcast after keeping men in jail for decades on weed charges. And the left are like, yeah, come on, yes, slay queen. What, the Fed? The Fed. The left are now cheering for a literal fucking Fed who put people in jail for decades for smoking weed. Like I've said, see that, no, I'll admit, like, I'll admit, the government are fucking idiots, right? They're stupid, they're dumb. However, the most impressive thing they have ever done is made leftists completely 180 on everything they ever believed, while still being convinced that they're leftists. It's impressive. It's either the government are really, they're a lot more, they're a lot more capable than I thought they were, or leftists are just that stupid. But anyway... Both had grown up in homes headed by abusive fathers, with mothers impotent to defend their children. In Hitler's case, the bright and sensitive child suffered merciless violence. Trump was subjected to the ruthless emotional dictatorship of a father. The emotional dictatorship of a father. No, someone got told, no, you're not going out dressed like a whore far too many times. This article's starting to make sense. Fred Sr., who Mary, McDonald's psychologist niece, describes as a sociopath, Donald Trump is a poster boy for trauma. The eminent trauma psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk told me. Cock. In both cases, the rage and hatred represent eruptions of the forbidden and therefore repressed emotions of childhood and the compensation of a psyche pulverized into insignificance. In turn, as the biographer Volker Ulrich writes, Hitler gave the decisive signal for Germans to give free rein to their hatred and destructive desires. A little bit like Antifa. A lot of people don't really give a shit about the message of Antifa. They just want an excuse to be violent. But because we live in the age of like social media and stuff like that, where you're like your character and your ego are very, very important. You know, it's not just enough. You want to be able to enact out these desires, but you want enough like plausible deniability where you're like, oh, but I did it for good reasons so that you're still accepted by your community. Why did you just walk up and randomly punch that poor man in the face? Oh, well, he was a Nazi. Oh, well then, bravo, yay. And you're still accepted by the community. You've not been socially ostracized, but you still got to act out those little violent, horrible urges that you really want to act on. You know, I really wish I could just violently fuck a person up right now because I'm a little sociopath, but my ego still matters really, you know, ego's still really important to me. So how can I get away with it? I know, I'll join Antifa. Because you're all little fucking sociopaths. But anyway, what they want, he wrote, is the victory of the stronger and the annihilation or the unconditional surrender of the weaker. No, it's not about that at all. It's not about that. People just have a culture and have a people and they want that to be protected. They just want to live in a society that they want. Like, say, for example, Haiti. Haiti is a weak country. You know, they're hit by a fucking typhoon every 3 days. You know, they're eating people in the streets. They're completely, you know, I know that they're over in America now eating ducks and eating people's cats and shit like that. But the country Haiti, they've got the little slice of the world. I don't give a fuck what goes on there. I don't want to go over there and destroy them. I don't want to bomb the country. I don't want to invade the country. I don't want to do anything to them. They've got the little slice of the world and it's theirs to fuck up. Right? I don't want to vanquish them. Why? Where's the honour in beating such a weak people? And also, why would you want to do that anyway, other than to act out violent and horrible urges, right? No one has the desire to do that, at least on the right. No one has the desire to do that. No one on the right's talking about invading Africa and slaughtering all of them. Like, nobody's doing that. People are trying to defend their home soil. That's what it is. People have a culture, an ideology, a people, a nation that they want to protect. It's not about vanquishing the weaker. It's about protecting what is theirs from foreign invasion. That's what it is. This entire thing's a massive misread. You've never ever actually spoken to anyone, probably even on the right wing, never mind an actual Nazi. There's one like 12 feet from me. I'm kidding on. He's a nice guy. He's a nice guy. Just don't bring them up. this fascistic drive to dominate is the unconscious rejection of the small child's vulnerability and the defensive identification with the unassailable power of the abusive father. What draws people to such leaders on the socio-economic plane? Their own sense of exclusion, dislocation, grievance, marginalisation, loss of place and meaning. I didn't know white people could feel such things. How crazy. On the emotional, psychological level, a trauma-induced absence of confidence in themselves and the drive to submit for protection to someone perceived as strong. That part I would agree with, and this is where me and like the Nazis and the fascists always bump heads with each other. Yeah, we need an all-powerful government, we need a strong government and stuff like that to do all the things that I want, and then it's kind of like, cool, but is that government always going to do the things that you want? What if that government turns around one day and decides that you are the enemy? Right? I'm just saying, look, a lot of the boys out there, you've all got anime avatars, right? I'm just saying you're playing with fire. A lot of you, right? Yeah, you might get a fascist government in, but one day they might turn around and go, this is some degen shit, round these fuckers up, right? I'm just saying, right? You're playing with fire a little bit. So where I bump heads is they say they need an all-powerful government, and then my response is, do you think that all-powerful government is always going to be on your side? Because one day it might not be, and by then, what the fuck are you going to do about it? Right? That's I don't like unchecked power. Right, yeah, okay, the unchecked power might be serving your interests for a while, but one day it might not. And then by that point, it's far too late for you to do anything about it. That's just what I like to point out. Right, I do, fuck you, fucking cringe lib. I never like libertarian even, not lib. But like, I'm okay, but still, come on. It's an important thing to consider. I've just read that. This is coupled with an urge to flee from responsibility by casting blame on some vulnerable yet vermin-like on some vulnerable yet vermin-like and threatening other, a Jewish, Muslim, Hispanic, or Slavic person say, what's wrong with the Slavs? I mean, they're not white. But like, no one's afraid of Slavs. I mean, Slavs aren't coming over here and fucking with people. Don't fuck with Slavs. But like, they're not coming over here and like fucking stabbing our kids. Who serves as the target of one's ingrained hostility, the real sources of which rest in the deep infantile unconscious. The American psychologist Michael Milburn has studied the childhood antecedents of right-wing ideological rigidity. His research confirms that the harsher the parenting atmosphere people were exposed to as young children, the more prone they are to support authoritarian or aggressive policies, such as foreign wars, punitive laws, and the death penalty. I mean, you know, don't want to fall into the per capita meme, but I had a rather strict, child. I was a Scottish boy growing up in the early 90s. If I opened my mouth, I did get a little bit of that. Got a lot of that because I was a cheeky bastard. Right. However, so no, I don't want foreign wars or punitive laws or the death penalty or anything like that. However, generally that's probably different. I don't know, so I can't comment on that. We used physical punishment in childhood as a marker of a dysfunctional family environment, Milburn said. There was significantly more support for the capital punishment, opposition to abortion, and the use of military force, particularly among males who had experienced high levels of physical punishment, especially if they never had psychotherapy. I was intrigued by that last finding. Psychotherapy, Milburn said, speaks to a potential for self-examination, for self-reflection. Self-reflection, something the fascist mentality cannot abide, can soften the heart. Self-reflection, something the fascist mentality cannot abide. Like, that's not true. Like, all the ones I know are permanently in the gym reading Nietzsche and all that stuff. They're trying to understand themselves and their soul. There's a lot of soul searching with that lot, right? They're always reading not self-help books. It's more like philosophical type stuff that they prefer reading, right? So that bit I have to disagree with that. That's not true. They're constantly self-reflecting, like in a spiritual sense. That they do that fucking a lot. So I disagree with that. Neuroimaging studies have shown that the amygdala, the tiny almond-shaped brain structure that mediates fear, is larger in people with more right-wing views. Look at the fucking size of my amygdala. Got a big amygdala, big, thick, girthy amygdala. It is more active in those favouring strong protective authority and harbouring a suspicion of outsiders and of people who are different. This is a telling finding because we know that the development of the circuitry of the brain is decisively influenced by the child's emotional environment in the early years. The monster, Adolf Hitler, murderer of millions, master of destruction and organised insanity, did not come into the world as a monster. So wrote the psychoanalyst Alice Miller. Fascism, in that sense, is an all-too-human phenomenon, an outcome of many influences, salient among which, on the personal scale, is the unspeakable suffering of the child. Now, a lot of people, this is the thing, is a lot of these people writing this are like socialists and communists, which are authoritarian ideologies, so that says the exact same thing about you. Something must have happened to you as a child where you have wanted a strong provider because you were too weak to do it yourself. Maybe you felt too weak, maybe you really are too weak, so you want a strong provider. Daddy was absent, wasn't he? Daddy wasn't around. I can tell by the way you dress. I can tell by those scuffed knees. Right? I can tell. Right? You want a strong provider because you didn't have one growing up. This is Dr. Marcus coming in now. Right, I'm coming in. I'm gonna psychoanalyze you. You don't have anything, and things cost money. But work, Mummy and Daddy sat on the couch on benefits all day, didn't they? And you were like, why can't I do that? Why does the iPhone cost money? I want a strong provider, and you seek that in the state. That's there you go. That's my analysis of yourselves. Gabber Mate is who gives a shit, and there we are. It's just Guardian begging for money again. Now, Again, I would say that in seeking authoritarian, let's not, you've got to focus on the Nazis, but let's focus on, you guys as well at The Guardian. You like communism and you like socialism. Both are literally impossible to implement without an authoritarian central authority to dictate. Because you're not going to get, oh, if everybody just shares it, yeah, okay, well, how many people are in Britain? About 60 million people. You're going to get 60 million people to all agree on who should get what. No, you're not. Right, so the only way in order to whose a property gets appropriated, who gets that property, and how much of it, you are not coming to that unanimous agreement among 60 million people. You're not going to be able to do it with 10 fucking people, right? So, in every single case, in order to actually implement that style of government, you need a centralized authority. That's the only way you can achieve it, which is why in every single communist and socialist country, they have had to adopt a state as a centralized authority in order to actually enact their plan. And in every single case, people have suffered massively. Right? So instead, let's focus on seeking out authoritarianism. Basically, society got shit. Society got fucking terrible. Things got awful, and the current authoritative figures that we have been telling us to just shut the fuck up and deal with it while they fill their pockets. While our children are all being stabbed and raped, and old ladies are having their heating fucking cut off, and you weren't allowed to hold your grand's hand while she died and all that type of stuff. Things got really, really bad. So as a result, a lot of people seek authoritarian governments. However, you need to remember that at the end of the day, these authoritarians in government are still politicians, and you cannot fucking trust them. Right? You can't. And you might get an authoritarian government that you get in there because look at all the stuff that's happened with authoritarian governments all over the world. They fucking massacre their own supporters, right? Because eventually the government goes in a certain direction that those supporters don't want to follow down. Wait a minute, this isn't what we agreed, and before you know it, you're lined up against the wall. Right? So all I'm saying is, yeah, okay, unchecked power. It looks tempting. It looks nice to have your big authoritarian government in there because the government's like, I'm totally going to do all the things that you want me to do. I absolutely promise. Until it doesn't. And by that point, there's not much you can do about it. Right? I understand the temptation. I understand things. This is for left and right. I understand that things are shit. I understand that the temptation of an authoritarian government, I get it. I completely understand it. I used to be a tanky myself back in the day. Right? However, unchecked power, right? The government isn't always going to be your friend. And the day that it turns on you, you're not going to be able to do anything about it. So, authoritarian governments are a bad idea.